Hello, everyone. My name is Evan Freiberger, and this is a weather forecast talking about a signal coming to the United States of a low pressure system that could potentially bring another shot of severe weather to our country. But we're going to be breaking down some of these smaller details here and the larger details in order to try to figure out what this storm will do. Also, in the short term, there's some chances for some severe weather along the Gulf Coast, and we'll be going over the smaller details on that storm as well. Before we get started, if you do end up enjoying this forecast, consider sharing it on your social medias. You never know who's looking for a weather forecast. But anyways, let's go ahead and get right to it. One of the main systems that we're going to be watching out for is going to be this one as we go into the future on the 14th of March. Now, this is pretty far out there, so what we're doing right now is using ensemble models, which kind of paint an average of what is possible. And you can see that we have multiple little dots down here and numbers that kind of indicate the possible pressures across multiple different model runs, kind of smushed together in an average on one model run. And as you can see, there is a wide range of possibilities. The low pressure system could be a little bit further to the north and east. That would mean less forcing down to the south and east. There are some models that are indicating the low pressure system is down more to the south and west, which indicates potentially a little bit more forcing into the plains and the southeast. But as you can see, these are, especially for being this far out, pretty consistent here across the board over multiple model runs, showing a low pressure system in this area. And it's not just the GEFS model, the EPS model, which is another ensemble showing us some averages, also show a low pressure system around this area. A little bit later, though, so there's definitely some differences here in timing and when this actually comes into the United States. But even the Canadian model ensemble also shows a low pressure system here. It's actually a little bit of a weaker signal on the Canadian model, but it's definitely something that we've got to watch out for because, whenever we get a deepening low pressure system, especially down into the 990s or the 980s, that could bring some moisture out of the south and also some cooler air out of the north, combining to give us some storms, potentially severe weather as well. Keep in mind, we are pretty far out from this event, so I'm not going to really be able to tell you guys any details. And in fact, a lot of people have been talking about how low some of these numbers are. I mean, this could be pretty interesting for sure. I mean, we just had a low pressure system kind of in this area with a similar millibar. So that's this three-digit number above this L here. And once you get into those 980s, that's definitely a pretty strong storm. That does not mean that we're going to be having some widespread, very dangerous, severe weather with it. So let's kind of break down some of our chances for that. First, starting off with our American ensemble here, you can see that we do have a decent upper level jet with this storm as it ejects into this area. You can also tell that we have a little bit of diffluence aloft down here, kind of in the same areas of our last storm. See, we got wind vectors pointing off to the north and east, and some of these pointing more easterly to the south, meaning our forcing would be over here in eastern Texas, Arkansas, and also into Mississippi by this time. So we've got to be watching out to see how this storm changes over time, where that forcing ends up here in the upper levels, as that will force the thunderstorms to convect, produce maybe severe winds, and maybe even some tornadoes. So definitely something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, but by no means are we in the range of accuracy where anybody really needs to be freaking out about this storm just yet. EPS model is a little bit further down the line here. As you can see, it says this trough ejects into the same area by the time we get into the 15th. So some big day differences, and those will have some impacts. If this kind of comes through during the nighttime, there will be less instability for this storm. And also you can see that the upper level jet is a little bit weaker here on the EPS ensembles. Coming over to the Canadian ensembles, you can see a picture pretty similar here to the GEFS. So you can see a little bit of a stronger upper level pattern with the diffluence kind of over the same area as the GEFS. So there's definitely a signal here if other ingredients, smaller scale ingredients, can come into play here, that we could see some severe weather move into the southeast yet again with a pretty similar look to what happened last time. Looking at our lower level winds, there's certainly enough there coming out of the south, bringing that moisture up, and enough lower level shear to add to that upper level shear to cause some spin in the atmosphere. The EPS model is also in agreement there with a little bit further to the north away from that main forcing, but still enough to potentially support some severe weather. And also our CMCE model, our Canadian ensemble, is also showing a pretty similar scenario here, again, as the GEFS. You combine all that together, there's also a signal for spin in the atmosphere and enough forcing to support not only severe weather, but maybe even potentially tornadoes. So it's something certainly we need to watch out. But again, we are pretty far out from this. A lot of these details will change as we go into the future. It only takes a couple of these things to fall apart before you're not really talking about anything. Or what also happens sometimes is it only takes a couple of these things to get a little bit stronger, and we're, kind of in a full blown red alert situation. But we're not quite there to where we can determine either way that this will go. Now, one of the trends that I like to really keep an eye on early on and just to see how it changes is our trends on the instability. It can really kind of pinpoint where some of our severe weather could be by following those trends. If we go back in time here on the GEFS, you can see that we do have a decent percentage chance of having some instability down here in the southeast, but that chance gets a lot lower as we move up further up to the north. Continuing to go back to in time, you can see that the trend as of right now, so this is yesterday's trend. Now moving this forward into today, you can see that our trend is kind of wiggling around. It looks like maybe a little bit more of a northern trend with some of our instability, with some chances getting close to 40%, but it's still our main axis here is still down to the south where our higher percentages are for that instability to come in. And again, keep in mind, this is a very similar shape and area here as we had last time, with the kind of similar strength, low pressure system with kind of similar look on the ensembles as well. When looking at the EPS model, you can see that it also has it further down to the south here as well, not as big of a signal further up to the north, and those higher instability values reaching up just a little bit further up to the north for those chances. So a little bit of a difference, but overall in the same area. So there's some decent agreement across all models. Now, the main difference is the CMCE model, which is a Canadian model, so it's not really fine-tuned to the United States. It has some higher instability further up to the north, and then we can count that out for now as an outlier, but still some instability remains down there in that main corridor. So that's why I'm highlighting the southeast here, not as something to be alert on or even prepared for, but just something to watch for future forecasts as our signal continues to get better and improve in accuracy over time. Now, in terms of today going into tomorrow, we also have a chance for severe weather. We do have some severe storms over near the Dallas area with some reports of hail of almost up to 2 inches. So definitely a pretty interesting event that just happened over there near Dallas. It really seems like when we forecast severe weather for Dallas in advance, it usually doesn't pan out the way that the forecasts say. But then when things change last minute, then all of a sudden there's a severe risk for Dallas. It seems to pan out. It's kind of weird in that area, I will admit. But after these storms kind of continue off to the north and east as we go throughout the morning, eventually we'll see a little bit more widespread storm activity and potentially more severe weather activity as the storm moves to the east. By around 12 p.m., we're talking about eastern Texas, moving into parts of Louisiana, also over there, watch out the Panhandle. Those storms move off to the east throughout the day, and then by 5 p.m., we could potentially see some pop-up thunderstorms, but overall, it's going to be hit or miss out here. We're really not talking any area where we can really pin down where this severe weather is exactly going to happen. That's why it's a marginal risk. It's pretty conditional. It's pretty isolated to some of these spots. But, if any of these storms can get mature, you can't completely rule out a tornado or two with these guys. And as we move into the overnight hours, that severe weather risk will mainly move over here into Florida, Mobile, Panama City, Apalachicola, Tallahassee, as those offshore winds start to push those storms onto land. And eventually this will continue to push off to the east with, still some chances of severe weather as we go into the next day as well. Coming over to day 2, you can see that there is an area here for a marginal risk. This will also have the threat for some tornadoes, maybe some small hail, and also some damaging winds. So just keep your eye out there. It's not a big risk, not something to freak out about, but definitely something to be kind of weather aware, just in case you have some outdoor plans. That's going to be it for me, folks. I do appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next video. See ya.